Hey, community groups, welcome. So glad to see that you're able to gather today. We are a handful of weeks into our Above and Beyond series. And this week we were able to talk about God's glory. Now, God's glory is a huge concept, and I'm sure if we were to walk around the circle and talk through these things amongst our group, we would have a lot of varying definitions of what we think glory is. Now, I think that we were able to really work through some of those things very well for our service today, but we really kind of nailed down not even just what the glory is, but we really answered the why of God's glory. Now, we were able to say this week that we give God the glory because his glory is limitless. We give God the glory because his glory is timeless, and we give God the glory because his glory is relentless. And so, as amazing as that was, and as encouraging as it should be, I'm sure that we also were a little bit convicted, because we also know that in our hearts we are often prone to seek our own glory. Now, our glory will always pale in comparison to God's glory. So when we think about God's glory being limitless, comparatively, ours is always going to be limited. When we think about God's glory being timeless, we're going to know that ours is always finite. Whenever we think about God's relentless glory, we're going to understand that ours is relentlessly selfish and destructive. Now, what I want to do today is, as we talked about the why, I want to take the passage and apply it to our lives when we say, now to him be the glory. And instead of answering why, I want to say, what does it mean for us to do that now? How do we go about giving God the glory? What is that going to look like for a community group like this? Now, I think very simply, Paul has a good word for us in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 31, and it says it this way: so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do everything for the glory of God. Now, typically, whenever we think about what we do with our lives, it always serves some purpose for ourselves. And whenever we think about our goals, and we think about all of our aspirations, and we think about all of the big plans that we have to make something of ourselves, what Paul is calling us to do is pump the brakes and say, listen, I need you to slow down. I need you to reevaluate why you do what you do. Because your glory is limited. It is finite, and it is relentlessly selfish and bent on destruction. So what he does is he adjusts our attention to say, let's give glory where it's due. So give God the glory. Now, I think that the challenge here is that many of us think that giving God the glory is just deflecting any kind of like karate chop, deflecting any kind of praise or merit that somebody gives to us and just saying, oh, that's all God. To God be the glory. And that's a good thing. I would encourage you to do that. But I would also say it's not just about deflecting attention away from yourself to give it to God all the time when people acknowledge you for something. What Paul is saying is everything you do should be an act of service and an act of glory to God. Everything, not the things that you do in the public space, but the things you do in the private space too. Not the things that you do when you're on a stage or you're in front of your boss. It's the things that you do when you're with your friends and you're with your family too. So I think about it this way, especially as a student pastor. I see students all the time who will adjust their language when they see me walk into a room because they know that I'm watching. And I think that tells me a lot about the condition of their hearts. One of the things that I think Paul reminds us of in this situation is that God is always watching. And he's not always watching like he's just ready to smite us, right? God is a loving, gracious, forgiving, merciful God. He is a God with very high standards, though. He doesn't want us to be content to live our lives in the shadows of acknowledging him only when people are looking. He wants us to live lives that glorify him in everything that we do. You see, the passage that he's given us, or that I used here, is for God. We need to give God the glory, but it's also for his people to acknowledge themselves and to reevaluate how they conduct their lives. Now, I think it's also important to say that Jesus had some words for that too. In Matthew 5:16, he says, in the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. What I'm saying there is it's important for us to be a good reflection of God to the world because an unbelieving world is watching. And the way that we conduct ourselves in private and in public needs to glorify God. This is really a matter of a character, not just it's a matter of character, not just the actions that we take. Now, for a community group, I think that it's important for us to discuss these things, to think about what our tendencies are, to try to steal glory away from God and bolster ourselves up. And now, our commitments are really simple. It's always to fight sin, to fight for each other, and to fight for truth. Now, the truth has confronted us today. We have to do something about that. So community groups, as you have these conversations today, I pray that you would be encouraged. I pray that you would do everything within your power to build each other up, to call attention to sin for sure, but to do everything that you can to fight through those things, to build each other up. Now, community groups, I think that you are in a spot that is incredibly beneficial, that you are going to be used by God to shape each other, to give life to each other in some new ways. And I just want you to know that I'm really excited for the fact that you're able to do that. And just know that as a staff, we are here for you. If there's anything that we could do for you, we'd love to help you. Now, community groups, I pray that you are blessed today. We'll see you guys next week.